Welcome everybody to today's webcast, Data Protection 101, what to know now, sponsored by Infrascale and brought to you by virtualizationreview.com. I'm Chris Flack and I'm here to be your host for today's event, so thank you all for joining. Just a few quick things before we get started with today's presentation and introduce our speaker. Just a few reminders for today's program. So first things first is we are recording today's program for future viewing and listening purposes. We'll send you a link within 24 hours after the show where you can view the replay. We encourage you to share that with coworkers, colleagues, friends, anybody who may be interested on today's broadcast. We'd appreciate that. You could use the little paper airplane icon down there in the bottom of your dock right now and send an email to a coworker. It'll allow them to join you in the console here, and they could listen along with you as we're presenting today, so please feel free to use that feature. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end of today's program. We do encourage you, however, if you have a question at any point, to please feel free to enter it via the Ask a Question box appearing on the left-hand side of your console. And hopefully, if time permits, we'll get to everybody's questions and we'll get out some answers for today's program. But don't be shy. Feel free to submit your questions, and hopefully we'll get to them by the end of the program today. We also have a couple poll questions featured in today's program, so please feel free to participate with those as they come up. You could actually interact with the poll question on the actual slide itself on your screen, so please feel free to choose the answers to the polls when they come up. Joining us today, we have a really great speaker. Her name is Carla Federigo. She is the Director of Marketing for Infrascale. Her contact information is right there on your screen, but she's got years of experience in the field. I've known Carla for a while, and I've done many webcasts with her. So without any further ado, you're all in for a treat today. I will hand the presentation over to Carla so that way she can get started with our show. So Carla, why don't you join us and tell us what you want to share today?
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. I really appreciate your time. We're taking a look at the agenda here. So we are going to first take a look at data loss and disaster recovery, how it works, and sort of just level set so that we're all on the same page there. And then we're going to look at why DRAS is your best contingency plan against data loss, and essentially for your data protection for the rest of 2018 and looking into 2019 as well. Then I'm going to introduce briefly the Infrascale solution as well, just so that you know a little bit about us and what we do. But most importantly, the different sort of considerations that you want to be looking at when you're taking a look at data protection solutions and when you're looking at different DR solutions. So there are lots of features and functionality of different solutions out there, and you really want to be aware of what are the most important considerations when you're looking at them, since not all solutions are created equal. And then we'll have that Q&A that Chris mentioned, so we'll definitely come to the questions as well. So use that Q&A tool and just put in any questions or comments that you have as we go along, and then we'll make sure to address all of those. So we'll actually start off with a poll. So you are going to hear quite a bit from me today, and I'd love to just start off by hearing a little bit from you. So this first poll here is just asking, which single data protection challenge are you facing the most? Is it A, meeting RTO or RPO, so recovery time objective, recovery point objective? Is it data sprawl, just ensuring that everything is protected? Or C, proper disaster recovery planning, just an overall planning strategy? And then D, ransomware mitigation. So we'll give everyone just a few moments here to participate. If you do want to participate in that poll, just go ahead, reach forward, just click one of those options, A, B, C, or D. Again, meeting RTO or RPO, data sprawl, proper DR planning, or ransomware mitigation. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the results. Hopefully everyone has participated so far. So if we look at those results, we see 8% roughly of answer meeting RTO or RPO, about 33% data sprawl, ensuring everything's protected, and then we have 50%, half of you on the line here, proper disaster recovery planning. So it looks like that's the biggest one here, and then 8% again answering ransomware mitigation. All right, well, so we will talk a little bit about each of these. I'll make sure, of course, then to focus on those that most of you are asking about. We'll talk about proper DR planning. Data sprawl is definitely an issue these days, so we'll make sure we talk about that. We'll talk a lot about RTO as well, and then ransomware. Great. Okay, well, thank you all for participating in that. I really appreciate it. All right, so we're going to start here by essentially looking at some threats to business continuity. And the theme for the day is data protection and business continuity, right? So there are several different types of data loss and threats to business continuity that we're going to address. So we'll take a look at data protection when it comes to file and folder data loss. We'll also talk about data hijacking like ransomware, part of that poll that we just did, right? And we are going to look at business downtime by having systems and servers go down, so those macro disasters. So we're going to look at both the micro and macro disasters, right? The file and folder data loss all the way up to the natural disasters, the hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, and those macro style disasters that essentially put an entire business out of commission. So first, let's look at a few of the numbers here. If we look at data loss by the numbers, we know it really could be anything from just leaving a phone in a taxi or leaving a laptop on a plane. It could be hardware failure. It could be human error. Regardless of the cause, though, that problem of data loss is as old as our computers and devices. As long as we've had these machines, there's that question of what is going to happen when they go down. And then to this day, we still have lots of companies that lose data. And what we see is that the cost can be extremely significant. We'll look at that in a moment. But here, just taking a look at these numbers, 75% of companies lost software applications, virtual machines of critical files within the last year. 25% of PC users lose data every single year, and 15% of all laptops are stolen or suffer hard drive failures. So those numbers, really what we see that comes into play is it's not necessarily that data in and of itself that becomes so costly to a business. What we see, of course it can be, but what we see in general is that it's the cost per hour of downtime that's so crippling to a business. So this research is essentially showing the average cost per hour of downtime. And this is a great question to ask yourself. You really want to know as a business what it would cost you to be down for 1 hour. So if you don't have this figure calculated, you definitely want to look into that. So this is an important question to ask. For a small to medium-sized business, the average calculated cost per hour of downtime was about $8,000. But that scales up, of course. For a large enterprise, the cost per hour of downtime can be over $600,000 per hour. And so that average came out to right around $215,000 per hour that was found for the average business for each hour that you're down. So if a business were to be down for, say, 24 hours, most small to medium businesses, that's simply going to put you out of business. And if you're a large organization or enterprise, sure, maybe you somehow have the budget or the bandwidth to fit that in, but any small to medium business is likely going to go out of business in just a day of being down. So if we look at traditional disaster recovery and sort of take a look at the cost of disaster recovery in comparison to the RTO, the recovery time objective, right? Essentially, data backup and DR used to be one and the same, and it was just offsite tape backup. So I have another question to ask you guys if you're still on tape backup, right? And you can use the Q&A if you want to chime in with comments there. But essentially, with offsite tape backup, right, if a system went down, you'd have to go and get the tape and then rebuild and restore that way. So this solution is going to take several days at best, but really, a week or more is going to be the best case scenario to be completely back up and running. And then came cloud and appliance-based backup systems. So similar idea here, but more modern technology, right? Where you recover the data, recover the systems, and then you need to rebuild and restore the systems to get those end users back up and running that way. So if we look at the recovery time improvement, yeah, you can see the recovery time improvement here goes from days to hours. So it's a much faster RTO, but also more costly as well. And then if you have a need for a quicker recovery time, right, if you need to recover in minutes or in seconds, then you move to having a second data center. So that second data center might be one of these here, cold site, a warm site, or a hot site. Again, each costing more and more, but you're bringing your recovery time to seconds or minutes instead of hours or days, right? So if we look at traditional disaster recovery, you always have that trade-off. And that's the problem with, traditional DR to date. It's that trade-off between recovery time and cost. So if we look at each improvement level in RTO, your cost just goes up substantially. And that sort of goes back to what we were talking about in the last slide with cost of downtime. If you're a large organization, maybe you have the budget, you can afford that. But if you're a medium enterprise or a small to medium business, you just do not have that budget, right? So the question's just always been, is there a way to offer disaster recovery functionality at the cost of backup? And so that is where disaster recovery as a service is going to come into play, where you have a solution that can bring your recovery time down to seconds without the excessive cost involved. But what's really important with DRAS is that not all solutions are created equal. So, of course, we are going to talk about that in this presentation. We're going to look at the different features and functionality of various DRAS solutions so that you really know what are the important pieces to take into consideration when you're looking at different DR solutions and how to properly have a data protection plan in place. So before we get to that, though, let's take a look at a comparison of backup versus DRAS, and we'll make sure we're all on the same page with exactly, what DRAS is, but more importantly, what DRAS isn't, right? So in this scenario, this is sort of a ransomware attack. So we'll use this as an example. And with ransomware, you know that time is your worst enemy. So the faster you detect it, the more time you have to take action and restore your database and mission-critical apps. So with a ransomware or any outage, really, you just know that simple backup procedures are going to take significantly longer than any modern DRAS solution. So with backup, we're looking on the top here. With a cloud backup solution, essentially 4 to 5 hours is your best case scenario. And in looking at this, part of the reason is when it comes to that restore of applications and production databases from the backup, it's definitely going to require some planning and some coordination. So we're just looking at the top half of the screen here so far. If you have a backup system, you'll need to find a clean point from which to restore. You need to get the hardware to recover, set up the machine, recover that data, and when all is done, then you're going to test it for viability. So, of course, if it's not viable, then you need to start over before restoring the production, right? And so that's why 4 to 5 hours is that best case scenario to deal with all the steps involved. But let's switch gears and look at the bottom half of the screen and talk about disaster recovery as a service. So if you have a disaster recovery as a service solution, you can simultaneously cloud boot multiple versions of the same machine. That way, you determine the safe version to recover and then boot either to the cloud, a virtual environment, or recover to production hardware. So when we're looking at this disaster recovery as a service solution, the total downtime is about 1 to 2 minutes. So looking at that 4 to 5 hours in comparison to 1 to 2 minutes, I mean, that's saving a ton of time and money because of the simplicity of the steps in this DR solution. And we'll talk about it a little bit down the line. The Infrascale DRAS solution includes built-in failover orchestration. So that's going to let you create predetermined failover plans. They can be scheduled to boot simultaneously or in a specific order. And we'll talk about that because orchestration is definitely one of those really critical components that you want to be looking at, you want to be asking about, and you want to understand exactly how it's going to work before you choose a solution. So we'll definitely look at that down the line. But rather than just talk through these steps here, let's actually look at a real example and take a look at exactly how it works. So we're going to look at on-demand failover, and that's what DRAS supports. It supports DR to be on-demand with push-button failover, and this is sort of a scenario to see exactly how it's going to work. So in this situation, we have these end users and just working on their production systems. So I'll go ahead and install the Infrascale DR solution so that we can see how it's going to work. It's a hybrid cloud solution, so there's the on-prem failover appliance, and that's going to be installed locally. And it might be a virtual appliance or it might be a physical appliance. And then a cloud-based service, like would run on any public or private cloud. So we're going to capture the systems to the appliance, and then we're going to dedupe them to compress the amount of data that's stored and replicate those systems up to the cloud. So we've got 2 copies of those systems. We have one locally on the appliance and one centrally located on the cloud. So if one system were to go down, in this case here, system outage or ransomware, you see one system going down, the admin could fail over to the local appliance. From there, bring back the most recent point or replica of that system, and the end users can continue working with that application or with that server. So that's the easy scenario, right? Now, let's instead assume that there is a site-wide infection or attack. So that local appliance is no longer available. But that's okay, that's not going to be a problem. So we'll just take those same steps here. We're essentially going to fail over instead to the cloud. So we're going to bring up a full virtual environment that replicates exactly what was on-prem. Now, those users can continue working by interacting with those cloud-based systems. And so this is essentially what Infrascale offers is a cloud DRAS solution. All of the backups are going to be replicated off-site to allow for a much faster recovery, and it can be a cloud-based recovery of entire machines. The end users can continue to work while that production environment is repaired, right? So we need that failover. So essentially, if we take a look at how everything works with on-demand failover, we're going to essentially from here, now that we're all on the same page with that, talk about specifically how to protect against data disasters and really how to get a full data protection strategy in place. So we know, since we looked at those trade-offs to traditional DR, right? We know that those traditional approaches to backup and DR just simply don't work the way that we need them to. And it's because of that trade-off between RTO and cost, right? So we may get the recovery time that we need, but we can't get the cost to the point that we need, or vice versa, right? So again, what DRAS is going to do is replicate and protect your entire environment, and it's going to let you quickly fail over your systems, not just files and folders, so that way you ensure uptime and availability when anything goes wrong, maybe a ransomware attack, one of those micro disasters with file and folder, or a complete outage, one of those macro style disasters. So what we know, though, is there are many, many different ways to define a DRAS solution. There are going to be various ways to back up and recover critical systems and data. We have organizations that have different security and compliance requirements, right? And then there are also different levels of flexibility and backup targets and recovery options, and not to mention the need to control failback procedures and orchestration policies. So we're going to take a look at all of that as well. So what I have on the screen here, learn how to eradicate downtime and data loss. And that's essentially our mission at Infrascale, a very simple and short mission. Eradicate downtime, eradicate data loss. So we're going to take a look as well at how Infrascale DRaaS works. We want to look at essentially what items are important to take into consideration when you're selecting a DRaaS provider. And you definitely don't have to take my word for it, but Infrascale was named a leader in the 2017 DRaaS Magic Quadrant that was released by Gartner. So all of our solutions have been verified and vetted by the experts. So Infrascale essentially offers two services. It's a cloud backup solution and disaster recovery. So just to quickly distinguish between the two, Infrascale Cloud Backup, it's that direct-to-cloud solution. So it's oriented around data and bare metal image backup. This is great for endpoint data protection for laptops and mobile devices. So back in that poll that we first ran, that very first few minutes of the presentation, we were talking about data sprawl being an issue, making sure that everything gets protected. And the rise of BYOD, bring your own device, led to more data sprawl, right? So everyone is now doing more and more work on these mobile devices, on their laptop, tablets, and smartphones. So Infrascale Cloud Backup is really optimized for that endpoint data protection, as well as small to medium businesses and their servers. So lots of remote or branch offices, those road warriors, and mid-market companies. Then Infrascale Disaster Recovery, if we take a look at the right-hand side, it's that hybrid cloud solution that we just saw a moment ago. So it's going to include that on-prem component as well as the cloud. And with Infrascale DR, of course, you can back up data, but it's going to go a step further in capturing full system images and then allowing you to boot and run those images on a local appliance or in the cloud, depending on what you need. So knowing that, we've essentially already done all the work behind the scenes in order to prepare those images, ensure that they're able to run in the cloud, even though they were originally installed and running on a local physical server, okay? So just to run down a few of the specifics, taking a look at what we can support, just to be clear on that and clarify that we're all on the same page. We'll protect any device, desktops, laptops across Windows and Mac, mobile devices, iPhones, Androids, and that's including some MDM functionality, so mobile device management, geolocate, and remote wipe as well. So again, this is going to come into play with that data sprawl issue that we talked about earlier. This also includes both physical and virtual servers. So we support physical servers that are running Windows, Unix, and Linux, virtual servers on VMware, Hyper-V, and KVM. And we support more than 100 versions of operating systems. So that is really the broadest support footprint that you'll be able to find in the industry today. And then as far as recovery targets, so this is a really important one as well. So definitely a question that you want to be asking your provider or potential provider is what type of support for recovery targets. So we're going to support any cloud or a prepackaged appliance as well. So you could use one of Infrascale's 15 global data centers, or you could use your own private cloud if you have that infrastructure, or you can also use a third-party cloud. So our software is going to run with Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, also Windows, Azure, and IBM Cloud. So here is essentially this matrix is a great overview, really, of those last few slides that we just took a look at as far as the support. So it really is a total data protection plan. The columns here, essentially how to read this, are the different devices that we protect, and then the rows are going to be the use cases, right? So everything that we just looked at, in addition to data archiving as well, okay? So I haven't touched yet on security and encryption, but we do know that different businesses are going to have certain specifications for security and compliance requirements. So we definitely want to take a look at that and just talk about how important it is to really understand exactly how your solution encrypts data, if it's going to comply with the any regulatory compliance frameworks that you need for your business. So we definitely take security very seriously. In this slide here, we're taking a look at our encryption system. So your data is going to be encrypted at 256-bit AES locally, and then sent over an SSL, and encrypted again at 256-bit AES at rest in the data center. And if you want to take it a step further, we have another option as well called UltraSafe Max. So we can definitely talk to you about that as well. But really that security is going to be a critical question that you ask of your potential solution provider. And same with compliance, right? So all of our data centers are going to comply with HIPAA, SSAE 16, FINRA, SOX, CGIS, and many other regulations as well. This isn't an exhaustive list here by any means. All of our data centers are Tier 3 and Tier 4 military-grade data centers. And this is a critical question. If you're subject to any regulatory frameworks, just making sure that the solution you choose has that compliance factor built in for you. All right, we're going to switch gears a bit here. So I did mention that our mission is to eradicate downtime and data loss, but what we didn't talk about is our 15-minute failover guarantee. And that guarantee is something that no one else in the industry is able to offer. So that's another really critical question that you want to be asking to your provider. And with that 15-minute guarantee, I'll show you in just a moment here. Actually, maybe I'll jump forward in a few slides and then we'll come back. We're definitely essentially putting our money where our mouth is, right? So I'm going to skip forward just a few slides and then we'll come back here. And I want to show you our cloud boot histogram. So I mentioned that we have a 15-minute failover guarantee, but in this cloud boot histogram, you're actually able to see all of the recovery time for Infrascale protected systems. And this is actual recovery times, right? This is live on our website, available to view. I took a snapshot of it from a few months back just to be able to show it. So essentially on this slide, what we're looking at is each date on the x-axis has a green or a red bubble. And that green bubble there is going to represent systems successfully recovered. And if you see a red bubble, it shows systems not recovered. So if there's no bubble on that day, it means that there were no systems recovered on that day. So date across that x-axis, and then we're also looking at the position on the y-axis, which shows the average time that it took to recover all the systems on that day. So here, when you go to the website and take a look at this, you can also mouse over each bubble. It's going to show you the actual number of systems recovered and the average recovery time. So if it's a little bit hard to read on your screen here, what we're looking at in terms of average recovery time in minutes is 0 to 5 minutes. So the actual average recovery time here is about 18 seconds that we're looking at, and this is spanning a period of about 2 weeks. So essentially what this shows, just to recap, is that not only do we meet our 15-minute failover guarantee, but we far surpass it. And this is, again, published live on our website. So going back to essentially where we were, just sharing that 15-minute failover guarantee, because, again, no one in the industry can offer this. And a few pieces of technology that I want to share with you that fall right into place with that 15-minute guarantee. And this is within the Infrascale dashboard. So with switching gears here, we're essentially going to talk about specifically how Infrascale works and then some more of those critical questions that you want to be asking of your provider. So I want to talk a little bit about our anomaly detection technology. And the reason I'm bringing this up goes back to that first poll that we ran. This comes into play specifically with ransomware attacks. And again, we had about 8% of you from that poll who answered that they're most concerned with ransomware. So just to cover quickly what our anomaly detection technology is and how it works, what we're doing within our dashboard is we're monitoring backup activity. So we're monitoring that activity. We're looking at patterns of data change. We're looking at how frequently the data is changing. And we do this because with ransomware, we know that when ransomware gets into your system, it starts to modify all the files that it touches. So if it's a file that you're backing up, our dashboard is going to recognize it as a changed file. So in this change rate analysis, we're monitoring the normal number of change files per day. And if we suddenly see a spike where a much larger number of files has been changed, so that's what we're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen, that spike in data change, that's when the alert is going to be released. And the admin is going to set that threshold there. In this case, we have it set to something like 3 or 4 times the amount of change, right? But what's critical about this and what's so important is that you can proactively see the threat of data encryption before any ransom is ever posted, before the ransom is demanded, so you can see that data encryption by the hackers. So once that alert is sent out to the admin, you can essentially detect the issue before that threat hits. And this is really critical because then you can essentially log into the dashboard. You can roll back to that clean data environment faster, and you also have far less data loss. You avoid paying those high ransoms. And that's really important with ransomware because most solutions out there don't have a proactive warning system in place. Most are going to tell you, they can't detect the issue. They can try to remediate it, but here we're able to do both. And so another really critical piece of technology in our dashboard that I want to show you is orchestration. And this is one of the key differentiators in any DR solution, right? So we have this visual designer here in our dashboard for drag and drop orchestration functionality. And orchestration is so critical because it's going to deliver the orderly recovery of a server environment. So ensuring that all of those critical servers, applications, and devices come online in the proper sequence and based on proper dependencies. So what you see here along the left is essentially a list of your bootable machines you're going to see there, and then you can drag them over to the diagram design surface. And from there, they can be rearranged as well, add wait times in between boots to add delays if needed, create boot groups. Some can run together or separately. Essentially, if some machines are more critical than others and they need to be separated out. And then in here, you can also specify network configuration settings for these machines. So in the LAN configuration, you can specify the subnet, gateway, DNS servers, DHCP range, and you can enable or disable outbound internet access. So no matter what DR solution you choose, it's just so important to understand exactly how that solution plans to fail over your applications and then fails back, right? It's also really important to understand how much customization and control you're going to have in that whole orchestration process. So regardless of what DR solution you work with and you choose, just keep that in mind. These are really important questions to be asking your provider. All right, so I had skipped ahead. Our cloud boot histogram here is next, so I'm going to skip over that again. We don't need to come back to that. I did show that to you. So I want to run one more quick poll here. So you have heard quite a bit from me, and then I want to hear again from you. Are you considering any data projects in the next 12 months? A is yes, we're evaluating solutions. B, we haven't started looking. Or C, no, that's why we're here. So I'll give everyone a few moments to participate here if you want to go ahead and answer that poll question. just give everyone one more moment to reach forward and participate. And then let's go ahead and let's take a look at the poll results. So let me go ahead and share those results. We have 28% of you currently evaluating solutions, and then 14% haven't started looking, yes, considering a data protection project, but haven't started looking yet. And then a little over 50% know that's why we're here. So great info. Thank you guys for participating in that. I appreciate that. And hopefully so far the info that we've shared has been helpful, right? All right. So we are going to talk a little bit here about Infrascale as a company, who we are and what we do, and then from there we're going to jump into the Q&A. So if you haven't gotten your questions in yet, make sure to go ahead and do that now, as we are going to be coming up to that Q&A shortly, and then we'll be wrapping up after that. So just a little bit about Infrascale and what we do. Here at Infrascale, we were founded in 2012. We are headquartered in Los Angeles, California, and we currently have over 100 petabytes of data protected across our global grid. If you take a look at the right-hand side here, I did make a quick mention of this, but didn't share the details or show the magic quadrant. But our approach is essentially gaining a lot of momentum, right? So I mentioned that we were a 2017 leader in the Gartner Dress Magic Quadrant. We're third right behind IBM and SunGard. So back in 2015, we were Gartner Cool Vendor in business continuity and disaster recovery. And then in 2016, we were a visionary in disaster recovery as a service. And then 2017, that leader in DRAS. So definitely gaining a lot of momentum. Our approach is of course being noticed, and all of our solutions have been verified and vetted by the experts at Gartner. We were also named Best Ransomware Solution by Redmond Channel Partners as well in 2017. So our solutions have been gaining a lot of attention. And if we take a look at this map, we're essentially seeing here that each red dot on this map indicates a business that we protect. So we're protecting over 55,000 companies, and we're active in over 170 different countries worldwide. And we're doing that through our global grid. I mentioned we have 15 global data centers, and we're essentially using intelligent software. We're using built-in global deduplication, compression, and WAN acceleration technologies. And we've really eliminated expensive hardware. So you can bolt on an unlimited amount of cloud space for long-term storage. We're using intelligent cloud spillover, and it's a low monthly subscription. Everything is based on the number of terabytes protected. So you only pay for what you protect. And we can protect any hybrid environment. So we're looking here at the source side, where we can protect both physical and virtual servers, applications, workstations, and endpoints, and even cloud workloads as well. So G Suite, O365, where that comes into play as well. Everything is going to be managed through our dashboard, a single pane of glass. And then on that target side, again, either the Infrascale cloud, one of those 15 data centers, your own private cloud, a public cloud, or that on-prem appliance. So everything that we essentially can protect is sort of listed here on this. This is one great view to recap a lot of what we covered today so far. All right. So knowing a little bit about us as a company, and then hearing some of those critical considerations that you want to be looking at when you select a DRAS solution, let's go ahead from here and dive into the Q&A. So you had hopefully a minute there to get some of those questions in. You'll have a few more moments here as we start to go through the Q&A. If you have any additional questions, to be sure to get those in here. So let's go ahead and start into the questions. All right. So I'll just start in the first list of the questions here. The first question says, you didn't share specific cost. What is the pricing model? So yes, I made quick mention, but we didn't get into the details. So pricing, essentially, it's simply based on the amount of data that you have to protect. So it could start at just a few $100s if you're just using cloud. We have appliances as well that range from just a couple of terabytes up to hundreds of terabytes. But essentially, it's simply based on the amount of data that you have per terabyte, right? So it's going to be one low subscription cost. You don't have any additional add-on fees. So there aren't going to be any additional costs for support, for maintenance, for upgrades. Everything is going to be included. No additional cost for the actual hardware. That's all going to be included as well. Next question says, what changes regarding cost if a cloud backup server needs to be spun up? Are there costs associated with spinning up in the cloud? So no, there aren't going to be any additional costs. That's going to be included in the pricing simply based on amount of data protected, not based on number of recoveries. Okay, next question asking, if I go over capacity, is my data not backed up? All right, if you go over capacity, we're going to contact you first off to let you know that you need more space. You're also going to receive warnings in the dashboard as you get close to capacity. So, but we're never going to leave you hanging without your scheduled backups. Your data is protected. Next question says, is the backup real time, or can we determine the frequency of when each server is backed up? So the protection policies are completely configurable. You have control over that within the dashboard. You can set it to protect every 24 hours, every 15 minutes, or really whatever you'd like. All right, next question says, do you leverage data dedupe? And what sort of dedupe efficiency do you get? So that's a great question. We do. We have an up to 90% deduplication rate. Essentially, it's simply going to depend on the types of data and files, but we do have a very powerful dedupe technology that's built in. Next question says, are there minimum bandwidth requirements? So as far as minimum bandwidth requirements, at least a 1 megabit connection. Because you're buffering on the appliance, the amount of dedicated bandwidth that you need to the cloud is going to be far less than you'd assume. We do also have that up to 90% dedupe rate, so that's built right in. Our appliance is going to allow you to throttle based off of speed, so you can set the speed in specific time frames. So because you have those throttling capabilities, you could trickle the data. The bandwidth doesn't really matter. You have that local data stored on the appliance, and you can push up on your schedule. You could front load at night or a little bit at a time. You could seed if you need that initial push up as well. Next question says, what is your support like? Do you offer 24/7 support? So we do offer 24/7 support. It's 365 days a year. And half of our support team is based in Los Angeles. We also have half of our support team based in Salt Lake City, available via email, via live chat, via ticketing. We also have a knowledge base, and we have that phone line as well. So you'll always be able to reach us if you need support as well. Okay, great questions coming through here. Next question says, can you replicate to multiple cloud services? Yes, we can support Amazon, Azure, IBM, Google Cloud, also Infrascale's own cloud services. We have a question here asking, where are your data centers and how many do you have? So we have those 15 global points of presence. I mentioned that, but we didn't talk about specifically where they're located. So we do have data centers throughout the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, South Africa, Asia, and South America. So we do have a global presence. And then a question here asking how redundant are your data centers? So that's a great question. So we replicate to another machine within that same data center in case that cluster goes down. We also are going to replicate to another data center in a different geographic region in the event of a problem at that data center itself. So also, in addition to that, most of our customers keep a replicated copy, and since we keep replicated copies of all of our protected data, then redundancy isn't going to be an issue there. But of course, you know, with critical data, you can never have too much protection, right? Okay, question here. Where's the customer portal available? So that dashboard or portal, it's going to be available through any browser. You can access it from any computer, but also from any tablet or smartphone. You can log in as well. Okay, and then another question here asking, is there a demo or an evaluation available? So yes, of course. So if you'd like to sign up for an evaluation, I'm definitely happy to set you up with that. We can also have you set up with a one-on-one demo. So if you'd like a demo or if you'd like to be set up with an eval, then go ahead and just use that question tool to type in your request there, and we'll definitely get you set up. Another question here, specifically about the data centers. You mentioned having 15 data centers. Can you ensure my company's data remains within the USA? Yes, we definitely can. You're able to request specifically which data center you use, because that is a very important consideration to take into place, especially when it comes to data sovereignty issues. Another question, is Infrascale considered a business continuity management tool or a disaster recovery tool? So we have two solutions. One is a cloud backup solution and one's a disaster recovery solution. So yes, we have those two options. And one being just direct to cloud, the other, yes, you can back up data, but then you can also fail over entire systems. Okay, so with that, looks like we are going to wrap up the webcast for today. If there were any questions that I missed, or there were definitely a lot of questions coming through as I scroll through all of them. If there's anything that I missed, I'll definitely look through this list here and reach out to you via email if there's anything that I noticed I missed here. And definitely if you requested a demo or an evaluation, keep an eye out in your email so that I can reach out to you to help you get set up with that. And then lastly, we are going to be sending out a copy of these slides for you, so just keep an eye on your email for that as well. You'll have a copy of these slides for any of you who didn't grab them from the resources here. You do have that available to you, but I'll also send an email out for everyone. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining today. I really appreciate your time and appreciate all questions and comments that have come through, and very much look forward to working with you down the road as well. So thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Carla, for your time. Excellent presentation. Don't forget, there's going to be one last poll question as we exit today. If you all just wouldn't mind answering that as we exit the webcast, that would be great. So thank you so much for that. But Carla, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. Everybody in the audience, thank you so much for visiting us today. Don't forget, take the resources, take the links down. There's slides in there. There's everything. But everybody, thank you so much for your time. Carla, thank you so much for everything as well. Today's webcast has been sponsored by Infrascale and brought to you by virtualizationreview.com. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day, everyone. Take care.